You've done buildings like the Four Seasons Surfside, Palazzo del Sol and Del Luna in Fisher Island, Chateau Beach in Sunny Isles, the One Hotel in Miami Beach, and even Panorama in Brickell.
That's what set me in the path of studying architecture. And so you get this comprehensive understanding that architecture is not monoplanar. It is multi-levels, three-dimensional, not only in design, but also in thought. And that was arguably the best thing that the city of Sunny Isles Beach could have done. I think in a way right now, we are potentially entering another cycle of rejuvenation. So the One Hotel is a good story because
Kobi,
Omar,
can't thank you enough for taking the time.
it's my pleasure. I'm happy you're here this morning.
So you're one of the most prolific architects in South Florida, Miami, and beyond. And I mean, you've done buildings like the Four Seasons Surfside, Palazzo del Sol and Del Luna in Fisher Island, Chateau Beach in Sunny Isles, the One Hotel in Miami Beach, and even Panorama in Brickell, the tallest residential tower south of Manhattan, I hear.
So far.
Yeah, they're getting taller.
Yes, they are.
And I guess for me, I want to get to how you got to where you are today, but where did you start off? You know, where were you from? Did you always live in Miami?
No, I came to Miami in 1988. It was Miami Vice and Scarface days, so it was a little bit different. But it was still beautiful and tropical with stunningly beautiful historic buildings that have been here since the turn of the century. And that really felt good to me as somebody who loves architecture and design. Just to see the sunsets and driving along Collins Avenue or Ocean Drive and the way the sun lights up the buildings. It's like a stage set.
Amazing.
It's beautiful. So that was very attractive to me.
And you were originally from where?
I was born in 1962 in Israel.
Oh, in Israel.
Along the Mediterranean. And when I was 12 years old, my family moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
I heard great things.
So I moved from the Mid-East to the Midwest, so. But
You came to Miami, when you were 26, 28?
25.
25?
Yeah.
This was post-college?
1988, yeah, you're right. 1988, 1962, I was about 26.
Yeah.
And what happened is I came here to join a British company that was specifically here in Miami Beach on Lincoln Road at the Sterling Building.
Mm-hmm.
We were building hotels and resorts in the Caribbean, in St. Lucia, in Grenada, in Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we were at for a long time.
So you studied architecture, I'm assuming, in college?
I studied architecture at the University of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And my first degree was environmental design.
Okay.
And the environmental design degree was in the Institute of Technology to kind of get you into the thinking of design and how it is inclusive of the environment, inclusive of the built environment. And sustainability and resiliency back then was a little bit different than it is now. But that's what set me in the path of studying architecture.
Yeah. So you come to Miami to work for an architectural firm?
Yes.
And then how long, because obviously now you've got Kobi Karp Architecture and Interior Design, which everyone knows, but how long were you working in the field before making that transition, and how was that transition?
I started working in the field back when I was in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked in landscaping companies. I cut grass. I built railroad ties with planters. We created, and that was in Minnesota. So I worked in landscaping. Then I tried to work in an architecture office, but they didn't have any work. Mm-hmm. So they hired me to work in the field, to shovel snow out of the buildings while, because the snow would come blowing in at night and the windows are not in. So you have to shovel the snow out so that the workers can work the next day. And then I got upgraded and I started to work inside the office, but we were building models. I built models out of cardboard.
Okay.
And that was a very nice experience. And so I built up buildings out of cardboard. And back then we would draw by hand. We didn't have computers. So it was a different time.
Were you always an artistic like child growing up and things like that, or is this something like with practice and passion? It's sort of.
I was always good, Omar, and sketching and drawing. I would paint and draw birds and parrots and all kinds of things like that. Yeah, that always intrigued me. I was always good in art classes or photography and so forth. Yeah.
So when was it that you started the Kobi Karp architecture? How old were you when you were making that transition, and how was it?
I never really made it. What happened is that the British guys who hired me, the company was LPWK. It was called Lane, Pettigrew, Wood, Karp. There was a partner called Ed Jones, Simon Wood, and they're just great guys. And what happened is that they did not desire to continue to work here in Florida. And I was the licensed registered American architect in Florida. So what happened is that they decided to continue to work in the Caribbean, and they still do throughout the Caribbean. And I stayed here. They all came to our wedding in 1993.
Oh, amazing.
We're all there. And then after that wedding, they kind of all split up and continued our separate ways. And then what happened is that we were working, I remember we had a little office on Alton Road, on 1321 Alton Road. And this gentleman came in and said, I want to do a hotel called the Astor Hotel. His name is Kareem Masri. And Kareem says, Kobi, you have this Lane, Pettigrew, Wood, Karp. You sound like this big architectural firm, and it's only you and a couple of guys here, including a secretary, So, you should really represent the true name of who you are. And I thought about it, and that's when I changed the name from LPWK to Kobi Karp Architecture and Interior Design. And that's what we do. I'm a licensed architect, licensed interior design, but we love to collaborate. So we work with different interior designers and architects throughout, landscape architects. Collaboration is the way to create designs that are unique and ongoing and sustainable. And collaboration can be with the community. Collaboration can be with the owner of the home. Collaboration can be with a sustainability and resiliency group. It can be in so many ways done. And it can be done with not only the community, but also what the historic preservation people may want. And that's how design arguably is being created in a more thoughtful way.
Yeah, you want it to be a win-win-win-win with everyone involved, from the tenants to the residents.
Very much so. And very much so, because then people like the buildings that you mentioned. They're buildings that people like and hopefully enjoy when they live there.
Yeah. You also did Monet Terrace, right?
Monet Terrace with Jean
favorites.
Nouvel, yes.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So I'm assuming you didn't start in your late 20s or early 30s as like Kobi Karp Architecture doing billion-dollar building design and architecture. So what were you doing when you first started, and then how did that escalate?
We started to do work that did ramp up quickly bigger. And what I mean by that is that the Astor Hotel renovation or the Seacoast Towers, which was a Morris Lapidus building that we renovated and had plans to add on to. All of those kind of studies and projects were quite large in their size and scale. And they allowed me and the team to really see the potential of impact of design on the community.
Right.
When you meet people like Morris Lapidus in his 70s, 80s, late 70s and 80s, I worked with him. He was an institution, meaning he did a lot of product here in Miami Beach. And that was inspirational because it shows what the right person in the right place at the right time with luck can actually procure. Right. He did Lincoln Road, and then There is how it came together with the Fontainebleau and the Eden Rock. And there's always politics, and there's always egos and characters, right? And you study things like the Eden Rock and Fontainebleau, separation between each other and shadow. And you study that in schools of architecture when you go to the law classes, and you study that. And then you study it also in design. And so you get this comprehensive understanding that architecture is not monoplanar. It is multi-levels, three-dimensional, not only in design, but also in thought, in politics and community and preservation and so forth. You know, that's really like this room we sit in. We call it the jellyfish because you're surrounded by jellyfish murals on the wall. But if the murals were not there, you know, what would the room feel like, right? So that is the thought process that I subscribe to.
Is there a specific project when you were like in your early 30s that you think like, wow, I'm sure all of them are special to you in one way, but there was a project that you said, okay, wow, like I'm doing this and it's really, you know, kind of elevate, at least reputationally, what you're doing in the city?
The big statement came when I finished school and I came here to Lincoln Road to join the British company that I said, I'll come here for a year or two and I'll go back to school. I'll go back to grad school. But really what happened, Omar, is that I would go to St. Lucia and I would draw a building. And the next day they would say, okay, we can build it and this is the budget. And then they would start the construction. We did hotels like this. We did Club Meds. We did super clubs in Jamaica. We did all-inclusive resorts and hotels like La Sport and La Source in Grenada. We did crazy, beautiful projects that are still very much resilient and sit through decades in St. Lucia between the pitons. We did the Jalousie Plantation, it was called, with Colin-Tenant, Lord Glenconner, who was he was the founder of Mystique, Island of Mystique. Wow. And he hired us to do this beautiful resort that is still in St. Lucia between the pitons, outside a little town called Soufriere. And that's where our office was. And it's a hotel today. It's a Viceroy Hotel Resort with beautiful villas surrounding it. But that was the prelude to the development, not only of the site, but also the country itself. When you look at St. Lucia as an example, or other St. Bart's, the hospitality and the travel industry creates these destinations as desired destinations. And they create a huge value. So that was inspirational. That was kind of a turning point for me.
Yeah, I remember when you found out that I was from Honduras, which just goes to say how prolific you are. You're like, oh, I did the Indura in Honduras. And I had told you that my cousin got married there like a few years prior. And I was like, this is crazy in Honduras.
And that's how small the world is. But specifically, that resort, which was originally called Los Micos, because it's surrounded by these beautiful mangroves where white-faced monkeys live there, right? Correct. They didn't know what to name it. And then it went to Indura because of the location of development. And it's between two fishing villages. And the hotel now is a Hilton hotel with a Gary Player golf course, and it continuously evolves for people in Honduras, Nicaragua, nearby who want to buy casitas and villas and have a nice destination
to go to.
In the
it grows the whole area, not just what you're building.
That's it. So that really is an anchor for people to start to come in and not only fly, because then you go to San Pedro Sula instead of going to Tegucigalpa, for example, right? So you fly closer, and then they built the road. When we first built the resort, there was no direct road. We would drive for 3 hours, not as a direct road for an hour. And those kind of evolution thought process are no different than we have here in Miami that we're talking about in the late 80s until today. it seems like yesterday, but it's not. 1988 till, what are we now in 25, 26? It's a 40-year span.
Yeah.
And a lot happens in 40 years.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
How has Miami changed? Like, I'm curious to ask you now because, you came in here late 80s, early 90s, sort of the Miami Vice days. You were here through the dot-com bubble, through the Great Recession, and now through COVID and how it's changed. Try to give me, like, chronologically how clearly you always loved Miami, right? Just to the sunsets and the natural beauty of it. And, myself too, when I moved here when I was 10 years old, I was like, I'm never going to leave this place.
Yes.
So walk me through, I guess, the evolution of it from maybe like business to architect and design.
It's interesting that you asked that question because in the late 80s, when it was Miami Vice and Scarface days, and we started to do small little projects, there was no financing really available for new construction because people did not believe in Miami. So most of the money that was here, regretfully, was drug money, and they built offices and so forth, or luxury villas. What happened is that in the late 90s, there was this big movement of people coming to Florida saying, we want to come and live here. But they weren't wealthy people. They were people from blue collar, from the Northeast, and or from even Canada, French Canadians. When we came to Sunny Isles Beach, for example, and I opened up an office in Sunny Isles Beach in 1994, it was unincorporated Dade County. And we said, let's go and change the zoning and make it better here. And they were looking at the city of Aventura and they were looking at the city of Sunny Isles Beach, and Sunny Isles Beach had such a honky-tonk name that the people who owned property there, including the politicians, said, let's see if the city of Aventura will allow us to be called Aventura Beach.
Okay.
We feel it's a better name. And the folks in Aventura said, no, we're not interested in being connected to you.
Okay, interesting. It's in the 90s.
It's 90s, yes. There was a new mayor called David Sampson. And then there was a new coalition because they broke apart from unincorporated Dade County.
Right.
And that was arguably the best thing that the city of Sunny Isles Beach could have done, and kept its name. And where we thought that the people who would come and live in Sunny Isles Beach we thought would be French Canadians, that is, they were buying. That's not what happened. The people who really came in the early 2000s, from 2000 to 2010, were from Eastern Europe, Russia. And you have this big community there today, more so than ever before, that is what they do. And where we thought that they would have small units, they make these luxury buildings.
Huge.
Yeah. So it's evolutionary. Design is dynamic. Design is not static. It continuously evolutionizes. When we did the surf club, people said, the surf club, you'll never make it. It's Surfside is a honky-tonk destination. And they made it.
And now it's like probably the ritziest,
the crown jewel.
It's wild. So for you, when you go, like, for example, through the 90s, the people that were coming here were domestic, French Canadian. Did Miami always have this like Hispanic allure and Hispanic sort of flavor? Or did that sort of grow while you were here?
When I came here in the late 80s. So I came from Minnesota, but the people who came quite a bit were the folks who came by boat or by rafts from Canada, from Cuba, because Fidel kicked them out, but he also cleaned out the jails. So some of the folks who came here, who might have been in jail in Cuba, came here and saw themselves as having an opportunity, a second chance in life. So I met a lot of guys, because I was in my 20s and early 30s, and what I saw is people saw that they have a second chance in life. You can see it in their eyes. They were in jail, sometimes for criminal things that they stole or they killed. But when they came here, they saw that there was a new opportunity for themselves. And so it gave them a new chance in life. And I think that translated to a lot of motivation and a lot of desire to succeed. And it's not just real estate or construction or building, which there was a lot of. But it was everything. It was infrastructure. It was selling vegetables and fruits.
Yeah.
It was a real unique time to be here.
However.
Yeah. And I think in a way right now we are potentially entering another cycle of rejuvenation. You know, it's kind of, the way I see it, it's kind of like the snake takes off its skin and starts again. That kind of a rejuvenation. It's like spring in Minneapolis, or spring even in New York City. You feel new, you feel rejuvenated if you're in touch with yourself, if you're in touch with the environment. You feel it's a new day.
Yeah. And there's people always say that Miami is a boom and bust city, right? And I'm assuming your work as an architect during the booms is very, very busy. Towards the bust, it's less busy than it was previously. How can you maybe categorize what you saw, you know, in the 90s leading up to the dot-com bubble, or maybe before the Great Recession in 2005, 6, 7, towards maybe what we saw in 2021, 2022?
So the recession that you're referring to, when the markets crashed and the bank crash, was an interesting time here because we had big speculation. Mm-hmm. You'd get in your taxi and the taxi driver would buy 4 apartments, you know, in Miami. It was just wild. Yeah. And that, you know, as I say, you know, come to Jesus Day was around the corner in different ways through the financial crash. But we were lucky in a sense that we've always done work, Cancun International, but people from the UAE and Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Doha, Qatar were looking to build their communities, kind of like you were talking about Honduras. Yeah. And what they did is they invited us and other architects and planners to come there. Mm-hmm. And so in 2004 and 5, I went there, and by the time 6 and 7 rolled around, we were getting some serious projects for Etihad Airlines, Al Ain Wildlife Park and Resort. And we made some major projects and designs in the Emirates. And when the market crashed here, we had plenty of work there. Yeah. But really, the compression here was quite strong. And we were just lucky enough to be elsewhere. We were lucky enough that we had work in Caribbean, in Grenada. We were working on Spice Island Inn, which is a luxury resort. Yeah. We were doing the design for Endura in Honduras. We were doing projects in Cancun, Mexico, and Puerto Cancun, and we were doing projects in the UAE. Mm. But the BAM and the bust that you're talking about, in Florida, when the bust comes, it always goes higher. So if you look at it on a macro, there's a continuous growth. Uptrend. Yeah, and that growth is backed up by public record. If you look at the public record of Florida and the population growth in Florida, and I don't mean just Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, now it's a new city, Sarasota, Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando. Yeah. The growth, even Naples. Crazy. The population growth is sustainable and resilient because people want to come and live in the United States or stay in the United States. And in the lower 48, one of the best states is arguably Florida. Yeah. And that's what people come here continuously. The growth is very sustainable and has been. And we cannot build enough new product for the people who are coming here. You're not from here. I've never spoken to Tyler. Michigan. Where are you from in Michigan?
Holland, Grand Rapids area, West Michigan.
So what happened, we go to the UP, to the Upper Peninsula, Northern Michigan, but he specifically is an example. Yeah. And there's a good shot, more than 50% that he will stay here.
So yeah, he came here for a work opportunity. Then that work opportunity sent him back to New York, and he said, I'm not going back to New York. And then that's when we connected, because he's like, I need to find a way to stay in Miami.
And that's it.
And here we are.
It's like my son. I sent him away to Boston. He says, I want to come back. Yeah. Right? If people can have an opportunity more so than ever before to live in this kind of an environment, and I'm not, and different folks love different things, right? People from the Midwest love Palm Beach and Broward County, or they love the West Coast of Florida. Everybody has their own little niches.
But it's here somewhere.
It is here. Yeah. Somewhere.
That's a big not misconception, but like a staple that I try to help people get through in Miami, where they think Miami is, yachts and 11 and clubs and, out late and drinking and all these. And like, it definitely has that. But I tell people, like, especially for me, for example, I did those things. And now I'm at a stage in my life where I rather wake up early, go to the beach, catch a sunrise, do yoga. And there is that too. But when tourists come, that's not what they think of when they think Miami. So I feel like now it's rebranding as a healthier city.
It is. And furthermore, that's why I gave you the picture of 1988, Miami Vice and Scarface days, because that's what people remember.
Yeah.
And I like to have those kind of images in people's mind because it ties them to a face. And like you came here and now you're looking at the health and wellness. That is just one part. When I started to describe to you how I like to be here with the tropical sunset and looking at the buildings, it was a stage set. It's like the Lincoln Theater rejuvenation to H&M store. Those kind of developments, they remake you. And as an individual, most people, not all people, but most people appreciate it and like it very, very much. And as you come here and you have opportunities for work, he has opportunities for work, you have opportunities for work here, it makes it better. When the opportunity for work is not here in Florida is when we have a problem.
Right.
And this governor, DeSantis, when he kept the state open for me, he did me a favor. He did for me a Hail Mary. I've never, ever gave money to politicians ever in my life because I don't want to stand up in a public hearing and say and present a project. Someone says, "Oh, Kobi, you gave." No. But I have no relationship with the governor, and he came to Miami Beach during COVID, and I was invited, and my son was with me because they closed New York down. And I said, I just have to tell you, thank you very much for keeping the state open. And in retrospect, I did not know if he was right or he was wrong, but keeping it open allowed, our people, we have a large staff, people can come to work. And some people said, Kobi, I have to go home. I live with my grandmother and I don't want to get contaminated. And other people came in and said, Kobi, I want to come back to work because
I'm alone in the studio.
And not only that, I can't stand home with my wife and the kids are yelling and the neighbor's dog is barking and, I have no Wi-Fi. And so they come here and they feel stable, maybe for a few hours or a few days, and then they may wish to go back. But that opportunity was there. And then we continued to work, and that helped us quite a bit.
No, I love every time I walk into your establishment. I told you now it's like if I'm at Google because I walk in and there's breakfast, there's coffee, there's juices. Everyone's working in like an open space format. Have you always been in this building in Wynwood?
We have been here 5-6 years. This was Miami Advertising School before, and we bought additional buildings in the area, so we have a campus. But before this, we were on Biscayne Boulevard on 29th Street. That was a building, a MIMO building. That used to be the Miami-Dade Police Department for decades. People would come up the stairs to us and years later, they would say, can I get my driver's license, or my passport, whatever they needed. But it was a Miami-Dade Police Department, and we were there from about 15 years. And regretfully, we sold that building. And
when?
So we moved out of there in 2015. No, sorry. We moved in 2000. Right now we're in what year? 25. We moved out in 2019. So we've been here about 5 years. In this location.
And you bought it and then started, like you were an owner-occupier of it since the beginning.
We bought it and the Miami Ad School was here. And right before COVID, they wanted to move out. So they moved out and we moved in physically. And we moved from 29th and Biscayne. We were there for 15 years. From about 2004 until 19. And then before 2004 to 94 for 10 years, we were in what's called Sunny Isles Beach. In the Arcade Plaza on the second floor. And before that, we were in Lincoln Road and Alton Road in Miami Beach since 1988.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you speak to, obviously you own this building and you've bought buildings around it. You've got a paddle court now. I'm assuming you own your house. Are you an active real estate investor?
I like real estate, and I buy real estate for depreciation and for uses for us.
Yeah.
But I'm not a developer. So what I do is I can offer the real estate that we own to developers if they want to develop. We service developers. We service the community of development. And we work mostly with developers who have vision of creating value in a way that is unique and different. And I gave you the example of Sunny Isles Beach, where we created buildings and values were completely different and not existed before. We did the same thing in Miami Beach. You know, we go to locations like Surfside where people said, oh, it's honky tonk and nobody would go there. And we created, through preservation and restoration of the Surf Club, which was a private club, not open to the public, and made it into a hotel, so now it's open to the public, and added residences around it. So we designed that. We did the Seaway. Seaway is a historic arched entry building, which was actually built before the Surf Club. And so we preserve that building and make it into the prelude entrance to the new project. We made the historic Surf Club as the entrance to the new buildings. The Caribbean condominium on 37 and Collins, you enter the Caribbean historic lobby with a beautiful streamlined terrazzo floors, and then you enter the new building.
Yeah.
And I think that when people enter historic spaces and they appreciate it and they create more value into the new buildings, because buildings are like people. You know, you want to know where you came from and what's the history, and then you come to the new one. And most people would not necessarily want to live in an old building, but they would, or a used building as I call them, but they would want to live in the new one with the new technology and the new glass and so forth. But they appreciate where it comes from in the history. And it gives people, like you said, a psychological and a mental stability to enter the new spaces, the new buildings. Yeah. And that we use that quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it speaks to what they value and how they want to live their life. You know, when people move down to Miami, they oftentimes reach out to me through different social channels. And they're like, Omar, do you think I'd like Coconut Grove or Brickell or South Beach or Mid Beach or Sunny Isles or this or that? And it's fun for me to know the person that's talking to me and have an idea of what I think they would like. Yes. And give them suggestions that maybe they didn't know about, right? Like a Mid Beach, for example, isn't something that maybe somebody from New York is as cognizant of, or West Ave or Sunset Harbor,
yes.
Right? That I'm like, oh, go check out West Ave or Sunset Harbor. And they go, what's that? And I'm like, amazing. Like, go over there, you know, go to Cafe Umbria, go to the Whole Foods, the Trader Joe's.
I think, Omar, you hit a nail on the head. Why? Because you have these communities, Coconut Grove, or if I live in Coconut Grove, I don't know if I go to Coral Gables that much.
Yeah.
If I live in Coral Gables, I don't know if I go to Miami Beach so much. Right. If I live in Miami Beach, I don't know if I go to, Brickell so much. Yeah. If I live in Brickell, I don't know if I go to people usually stay in their neighborhoods.
Correct.
And then they venture out. Mm. And it's interesting because people get into a routine, a lifestyle routine, where they like to get up in the morning, then they go downstairs, they get their food, they get their exercise, they get their yoga. And that's why I like designs and thoughts like Live Local that just came out. It allows people in the community, policemen, firemen, teachers, to live where it is that they work nearby, so they don't have to travel long distances. Right. I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, travel to Miami Beach for work. Now, if I can live in Miami Beach, which I do, and I can work near my home, which I do, it makes life somewhat more enjoyable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like a commute, actually. I just don't like a long commute. But realistically, when you're driving in Miami, it's so scenic and so beautiful. I'm assuming from like the beach into the west side of the city, I mean, it's a beautiful...
Yeah, driving the causeway is a beautiful...
I tell people, I think Julia Tuttle Causeway, when I'm on it, I've been on it thousands of times. I am amazed every single time I'm on it. Like, I try to take it all in, and I think it's probably one of the most beautiful causeways in the world.
It is, because lifts you up. And then
Stairway to heaven.
exactly.
When you're going
Led
up,
Zeppelin.
I always tell that to people when I'm in the car with like Tyler, for example. I'm like, look, you don't see anything. All you see is the sky, and then when you come over, it's just trees, bay, ocean,
and the clouds and the sunrise and the sunsets. It changes all the time, and you can look to the right and see the ships and the skyline. You can look to the left and you can see. We don't have that, in most other locations.
No, it's wild.
It's very beautiful.
So with you that you've seen like the growth of Sunny Isles, the growth of different pockets of Miami, I'm curious to ask you, are there specific neighborhoods that you're excited about, especially excited about, that you think are turning a corner?
I like a lot of neighborhoods. I'll give you an example. In Miami Beach, I think Miami Beach is going through a rejuvenation now. Lincoln Road, when I came here in 1988, it was just horrendous. And then it got better.
Yeah.
And now it went down again, but not as bad as it was before. Mm-hmm. But now it's coming back again. And it's cyclical because it's coming back in a service to the community, to what the community needs. Mm-hmm. Local food and beverage restaurants, arts and crafts. Mm-hmm. Galleries are coming back. Things that people go to. Yoga on Lincoln Road on the second floor, we would do hot yoga, and on the ground level, we have the gym. Even the zoning is more complementary. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example. When I came to Miami Beach in 1988, we were not allowed to do offices on the ground floor for some reason, right? And so we had a store, but we had an architect's office. So we were illegally in this Sterling 925 Lincoln Road, where we had selling antiques at the ground level. We had offices in there. Creativity is a push. And I'll give you another example that is important to understand. I work a lot in Bay Harbor. We have a number of projects in Bay Harbor. And the city management said, Kobi, what can we do to rejuvenate the street, the main street of Bay Harbor, which has always been
King Concourse?
King Concourse. Yeah. And I said, it would be nice if you just allowed people to have food and beverage. Because when you look at it, there was a restaurant there and there was the palm behind.
A cafe.
Yeah.
Tiny.
So they opened up and they started to have food and beverage in the restaurants there. And now it's a place for people to go. And if they go there, then they go, okay, I can go and do yoga upstairs and I can go.
I've got Pura Vida there and stuff like that.
Pure. Yeah. I can go there and see my doctor. I can, there's a whole interaction that is important. And that fabric and DNA is what historically has always been the maker of cities. When you look at urban cities, I don't care if you're in Ho Chi Minh City or if you're in China or if you're in Venice, you have that ability to walk up and down and interact with the people and mix it together, rich and poor, commercial with residential, office with retail. And that's what makes the body of the street unique and special. And that is what they started to do at King Concourse. And you can see how it's rejuvenating the community.
Yeah, so we sold in King Concourse to David Martin at Terra Group, where he's building the well at Bay Harbor Islands.
Very nice.
And it's like, to your point, it's a big enough project that's bringing condos and office, like boutique office, that'll sort of continue to rejuvenate that area.
With food and beverage at the ground level. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's what you need to do.
Is there a project, the one that comes to mind for me that I would love a story on, maybe there's another one that has a better story, but the one that comes to mind for me to ask about is the One Hotel.
Yeah.
I tell everyone that comes to Miami, like they have to pop in there. They should go up. I was just telling Tyler here, I was like, you should take your girlfriend to the One Hotel if you guys have never been.
Yeah.
It's
and what did he say?
Gorgeous. Tyler said, I'm going to go. So he's gonna get going over there. But is there, whether it's a story about that project or another one that you'd like to share?
So the One Hotel is a good story because...
Did Starwood build it or Starwood owns it now?
Starwood...
Because I know it was sold for like $1 million.
Starwood sold it.
Okay, but Starwood was a developer then.
Yeah, it was Barry Sternlicht and Richard Lafrac together. Mm-hmm. And
two of like the biggest names in the industry.
Yes, and they made it into a hotel and a condominium where the southern part, the Roni Plaza, still stayed as its condo. And the northern part, because it's a mammoth of a building.
Yeah.
And so the northern part became the entrance to the new residences and the entrance on Collins Avenue that we opened it up with food and beverage and interaction to the street. And that was very important because now you're connecting streets together. You know, from the W going northward was always dead. And now you can walk through and feel, oh, it feels good. There's retail and there's gym and there's food and beverage and you feel comfortable. And then you walk on to the north. And we did it not only on the street, but we also did it on the beach. When you go along the boardwalk,
It looks beautiful.
they have the
You
beach club.
enter the beach club, right? You don't even notice that you're either in the beach club or the beach. They sort of meld together.
together. And then that's a public space. And then you can walk up and have the pools for the hotel and the condos on top of the parking. And then you can go to the roof, which is even more pool, private.
Then you get more of the view of
Yeah.
Miami.
That's it. You see the sunrise, you see the sunset. And it gets you back to where it is that you're over the bridge in your car. And you have this, you know, very eloquent kind of a visibility of the tropical sunset and sunrise that we have. And that's what makes the One Hotel, which is a recycled building, into something of a statement that arguably it would not have been.
Yeah, I mean, it's a timeless building. So when I look at you, for example, having built Chateau and Sunny Isles and the One Hotel, you know, both beautiful buildings, but both completely different.
Yeah.
So are you typically the one, you know, suggesting this is the makeup and how the form should take? Or is the developer says, no, I want something more glass and taller and rougher or versus, you know, natural and wooden? How does that come together?
Some developers have what they want, and some developers do not. In the Chateau, the thought process there was to create a building that speaks to the park, because they made a city park
Yeah, right.
called, right, the David Sampson Park. And so what we did is we curved the facade so that you have more glass facing the park and the ocean. And we knew that to the north there would be another building, so we oriented the building in a way that maximizes the views to the east, to the south, and to the west. So that sort of a vision there with Sergio Groskov, who's a great developer, not only here, but also in Buenos Aires. He and his family and his son and his daughter, they just care a lot about design and architecture. You know, Emmanuel, his son, is here, and they really are intrinsic about the quality of what design should be and can be. And it's reflective in the building, right? It helps a lot. Nadim, when we did the surf club, he was a visionary and very intelligent individual, but he had no experience. You know, people would call me up after we did the design and said, oh, you know, your client is going to fail. He's never built anything higher than a coconut tree. I said, well, you know, he's never built anything. How's that? But he is a smart individual. And not only did he create it, but he took something that was negative in the community, made it into positive, and expanded it. We're doing now the surf house.
The ones next to them?
Yeah, to the south, 8995 Collins Avenue.
Yeah.
And again, using the historic building that was there as inspiration.
Yeah.
So it was an historic building, historically it was there.
Yeah.
But we take that DNA and use it in the new design. And that kind of a thought process can lead you to a more valuable direction that people appreciate. People then would pay a higher price for a better quality of thought process and design quality. Obviously, the finishes and materials have to be nice, but they appreciate that. We did the same thing in Fisher Island.
Fisher Island, beautiful.
Palato del Sol and Luna, you said. You know, that's where the ferry comes. So we're not on the beach, and we don't have the grand view of the sunrise, and we're not facing downtown Miami, but, you know, we're by the ferry, and arguably we're at the worst location. But through the creative design and value creation, we created product that would be selling for the highest price per foot.
Yeah.
And when people come to Fisher Island, they look at those buildings and say, wow.
That's the entrance.
It's the entrance. And Sol sold quite well, and Luna did very well. I mean, Sol is where the sun rises, to the east, and Luna is to the west, where the moon would rise, right? And then Six Residences is now coming up. So
Beautiful.
yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah. So when I think about, I mean, there's just so many buildings that you've touched on, but do you see yourself moving from like, because now you're in Wynwood, right? You've got this campus. And for you, is this home and you'll continue growing it? You've got paddle courts now. Or do you see yourself potentially going to a different location within Miami?
I tell you, my industry, being an architect, is a great teacher once told me, we're in the service industry. You're no different than a doctor. You're no different than a waiter. And when you stand there in the beginning of the evening and the chef is in the kitchen making the food and the maitre d' is in the front and you are the waiter.
Yeah.
And you need to see who your clients are.
Yeah.
Who's coming to the table?
Yeah.
Do they have children? Do they want to be alone?
Yeah.
Is it a husband and wife? Is it a boyfriend and a boyfriend? Who do you have? Do they need a wheelchair to come to the table, sir? And you need to understand that you are in the service industry. I'm an architect, and it's very nice. I love what I do. My wife says, oh, you would do it for free. And I would.
Was it always like that, you feel like, in your early 20s?
Yes.
Or you're always like, man, this is just what I love, what I'll do.
It's what I
you're
enjoy.
not.
I get up in the morning, I enjoy it, yes.
Yeah.
I would not do it. I have a GC license.
Yeah.
I don't practice construction.
Right.
I understand development, but I would not be a developer.
Yeah.
I love architecture and the indoor and the outdoor designs on an ongoing basis. It gives me a sense of peace. It gives me a sense of tranquility. It gives me a sense of history. I study various things through architecture. I can study chemistry of materials. I can study, energy of people.
Yeah. Yeah, you are good.
I can get into people's business. When I do your home, I have to know where your toothbrush will be. And would you go, pee-pee, or do you go to the shower first?
Yeah.
Those are the things that sometimes we get into, right? When I do a doctor's office, to do a doctor's office than to do a heart surgeon's office is a bit different than to do X-ray, rooms, or to do a dentist office. So you become part of the people that you service and the people you work with. And I feel, for me, that's inspiring, it's educational, and it's a growth potential. And that's why I like it.
Yeah, speaking about how much you like what you do, something that comes to mind for me that I want to ask about is your work ethic. Since the day I've met you, because I've had the great pleasure of working on projects that you've worked on, and I'm, transacting the land or capitalizing it for developers, I feel like every time I reach out to you, my first thought is like, Kobi has to be, busy, Kobi this, Kobi that. And I'm like reaching out for a favor or whatever it is. And you always text or email me back instantly.
I like to be accessible.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be accessible. And I'm surrounded by a lot of great people who work with me for many years. I'm a delegator. I like to delegate. And I surround myself with good people who work with me. Some have been here for many years.
Yeah.
And some have left and some have come back, I just enjoy being accessible, and I like to be accessible to people. I don't like to be exclusionary. I don't like to be, away. I like the population. I like people.
Yeah.
And sometimes the value of the time that I have with my family is the most. But my boys are older, they like to spend time with
Jordan's
me.
running around.
They have things to do. They got, everybody has their own life.
Yeah.
But when you get together and you can be there and you can put phones away and focus on what it is that you're doing, then that's the most important thing.
It's nice. So some closing remarks that I want to ask about is, if I'm, early 20-year-old, I'm in architectural school in college, something like that, what are some things of advice that you would impart to someone that sees you in your career and in everything you feel and says, wow, I'd love to make steps towards that direction? Maybe some things you learned at 35 that you wish you knew at 25.
I'll tell you, when you start out, you don't know what you really are going to be. And I watch my son now, he loves acting, right? And you sculpt yourself as you move forward. Yeah. And what happens is that when I started out, people said, oh, Kobi, don't be an architect. There's no money in it. And they were right. And you should go and you should sell, aluminum siding was very popular for homes. So you should try selling aluminum siding. I did not do that, but I sold Scott's fertilizer at hardware stores for many summers and vacations, right? And I worked in hardware stores and I worked in gas stations. I think that as you move forward and you know what you like, because inherently on the inside, I knew what I wanted, but I did not know the definition of an architect. I did not know the definition of owning a business or so forth. I knew that I liked the feeling, I liked the buildings, I liked the inside and outside spaces. But at the end of the day, you need to give yourself the opportunity to carve yourself into the direction that you want to be, so you will end up where you want to be. It's like you were born in Honduras and you're in Miami, but in a podcast, something that you never had before in your life. Where he will be, I'm 63.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 31.
How old are you?
30.
The delta between 30 and 60 is huge.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Think for a second.
Yeah, I was 0 when I was 30 years ago.
Huh?
I was 0 years old 30 years ago.
That's what I'm getting at. Well, you were 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But you don't remember 1, 2, 3. You start to remember a little bit 5, 6, 7. No, I remember more than 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
I remember a bit more when I get to 15, 16. Yeah. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And I think you need to give yourself an opportunity to carve yourself, because the Kobi at 30 is completely different than the Kobi at 40. The Kobi at 40, completely different than 50.
Yeah.
Kobi at 50, completely different than 60. And you need to give yourself the opportunity today, with technology and what we have, to carve yourself out as you go forward.
Yeah, I like this idea of carving yourself, right? Because there's like an image of yourself that you portray, and little by little those image changes and what you want changes. And it's still typically in the same summit, the same mountain,
Right.
but there's different paths up it. It's beautiful advice. Kobi, I can't thank you enough for the time.
Thank you, my brother.
Absolutely. I find myself very fortunate to be working on, thank you, Tyler. I find myself very fortunate being able to work on buildings together tangentially. When a developer reaches out for me to help and they send me the plans and it says Kobi Karp, I'm like, amazing. It's going to go a lot more smoother. Thank you, Kobi.
Whatever you need.
I appreciate it.
Come by more often.
Yeah.